And since Biden took office, everything we did as far as immigration goes tripled. The number of aliens we caught tripled, the number of smugglers we caught tripled, the number of guns we seized because of this tripled. Everything across the board tripled. So human smugglers, we're going to do over 1,000 this year. It's been a tsunami.
Keeping our republic is on the line, and it requires patriots with great passion, dedication, and eternal vigilance to preserve our freedoms. Jenny Beth Martin is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She is an author, a filmmaker, and one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. But the title she is most proud of is mom to her boy-girl twins. She has been at the forefront, fighting to protect America's core principles for more than a decade. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
Today's episode is our last in the series with border sheriffs, for now. Having followed this issue for more than a decade, the sad reality is that the problem probably isn't going away anytime soon, at least not until someone has the guts to do the right thing. Sheriff Brad Coe of Kinney County, Texas, knows that better than most. Before he served as sheriff, he served with the Border Patrol in Kinney County for more than 30 years. In this episode, we'll hear about the many challenges Brad Coe faces, including having to cover such a large rural county with very few deputies. Sheriff Brad Coe, thank you so much for having us here in your county, Kinney County, Texas. Your county has a small portion of the county is on the border, is that correct?
That's right. Thank you for being here today to kind of get this out to everybody. But yes, we have 16 miles of what I call riverfront property.
Okay, and then how big is your county otherwise?
Otherwise, we're the 27th largest in the state. We're 1,369 square miles.
Okay, that is, and the 27th largest in the state. You've got how many counties in Texas?
254.
Yeah, so it's a very large county.
We're bigger than Rhode Island.
Wow. And how many deputies do you have?
I have 6 full-time deputies and 8 part-time deputies.
Okay, so that is not very many people at all to cover a large amount of land.
No, I mean, we've got, of course, 99% of it's privately owned. It's all agriculture. We've got 3,200 people in the whole county.
Okay.
So we're kind of, the density is in Brackenville itself plus Fort Clark Springs. And there's another 300 people that live outside the city limits that live out in the county.
All right. And then you've been sheriff now. This is your second term.
Second term.
You'll be running again for re-election next year.
Yep.
And then what did you do before you were sheriff?
I was with the Border Patrol here in Kinney County for almost 31 years.
And has that pretty much been your full career, border law enforcement?
I've been in law enforcement for 43 years now, and 30 with Border Patrol, and now 7 years here. So yes, the majority of my law enforcement experience has been here in Kinney County. And
you have seen a lot happen when it comes to immigration during that time. 31 years with Border Patrol. So what do you see that's happening right now? Kind of describe what you see right now, and then I'd like to go back and talk about the historical context and what you've seen over the course of your career.
Well, what we're seeing right now, to me, is unprecedented. Of course, we have seen influx throughout the years with my career here, but this, where they've just basically opened it up and said, come on over, we're going to give you a piece of paper to show up for court in the next 20 years. We've never seen that before, not here.
And how many people do you think are coming across the border every week and every month?
Well, I've got game cameras set out in some of the hot spots of the county. And every night I go through those pictures to see how many are walking through the county, how many were apprehended, how many not. And right now, we've had a lot of rain, so the apprehension of people walking through the brush is a little low. But we're averaging between 130 and 150 a night.
150 a night?
And that's just Kinney County.
And those are people who are not going through a port of entry?
No.
So, and with this open border policy that we are living under right now in our country, outside of the scope of the law, why are so many still going out of the port of entries?
Well, the ones that are wanting to get into the system, or they're going through the ports of entry, or they're turning themselves into Border Patrol when they spot them. The ones we're seeing are the ones that either A, are cartel-driven, B, are either cartel-driven, or they've got some type of criminal history, or they just don't want to be in the system at all.
Okay. And do you have a port of entry here in your county?
No, we're one of the few counties that doesn't.
All right, because you've got, it's a fairly small amount of your county that's on the border compared to other.
Right, I mean, if you look at the other counties that have ports of entry, the actual city itself, except for Del Rio, sits right on the border. Eagle Pass is right on the border, Laredo's right on the border, McAllen, Brownsville, all of them. We're actually from the border, we're 20 miles.
Okay. All right. And then explain what you mean when you say that they come in and it's fairly open right now and they get a paper and show up at court sometime in the next couple of decades.
Well, right now what we're seeing through sources that I've got, the Venezuelans are coming up and just turning themselves in. Right now I think Border Patrol's averaging probably about 800 or 600 Venezuelans in a 24-hour period. They're here for political reasons, they're here for sanctions, they're here for asylum, and so they're walking up to the Border Patrol agents, turning themselves in, being processed, and given a piece of paper promising that they will show up for court sometime within the next 2 to 3 years.
And is that happening with more than just Venezuelans?
Hondurans, Guatemalans, most everybody else from what I understand except for the Mexicans.
And then what happens when you're a Mexican citizen coming up?
If we catch them, or Border Patrol catches them, if we catch them, we turn them over to Border Patrol takes them back to the port of entry.
And then when they get to the port of entry, they have to go back into Mexico?
Back to Mexico.
So all the people who are coming up, in going through and being given the paper to appear in court, it's everyone but Mexicans, is that
Pretty
correct?
much so.
And why is that?
Well, of course, I've been out of that loop for almost 8 years, but there's an agreement with Mexico that their citizens can be repatriated right there on the spot. Catch them, process them, and turn them back. What they call OTMs, other than Mexican, your Guatemalans, Hondurans, Chinese, everybody except Mexico, there's an agreement through the State Department how to repatriate those people back to their country, and it's a lengthy process.
But they are supposed to be repatriated.
They're supposed to be.
But that's not really happening.
No.
Okay, what have you seen over the course of your career? How has the immigration system changed from when you first began and throughout that time?
Well, many years ago, I was a young man, believe it or not.
I believe it.
One of the guys I worked with, we worked back then we were a small station. And one of the guys I worked with, we worked together a lot. Well, we're down at the river one night, and we called a small group, 5 or 6, and there was an older gentleman in the group. He was probably in his 50s. And we're sitting there waiting for something else to happen there in the van. We're talking to him, sharing our dinner with him, telling stories back and forth, where are you from, on and on. Well, politics comes up. And John's asking the guy, and we're talking this back in the mid-'80s, and this has stuck with me ever since. I didn't understand it at the time, but it's one of those things that the more I thought about it. He said, if the United States sneezes, Mexico catches the flu. In other words, if our economy has just the slightest dip, Mexico suffers. If Mexico suffers, Guatemala suffers even more. So right now, I wouldn't say the United States has sneezed, but we've got pneumonia. And so that's part of why they come, depending on how our economy is as to how their situation is. So with that in mind, over the years, every time we've had either a presidential election or midterm elections, there's always been a slight spike in migration from Mexico or other countries into the United States, because there's always that promise of amnesty, or we're going to give you a shorter pathway to citizenship. It's always a rumor, but they're going to take advantage of it. The smugglers take advantage of it. And we'll get you to the United States for X number of dollars, you're going to be given amnesty. So there's the English version, we're going to try, and then there's the Mexican version that says we're going to. So it's miscommunication. And the smugglers prey on that. So they get these people to come in waves. And since Biden took office, it's been a tsunami.
And what do you mean when you say tsunami? What was it like before he took office versus now? Describe that.
Shortly before he took office, when I can use the numbers that we have, when my guys would go out and work, we would catch what we call smuggling load, people trying to smuggle people into the United States. We were catching 3, 4, maybe 5 a month. We thought we were on top of the world. Shortly before Biden took office, we saw an increase. The first year he was in office, we saw a huge increase. We caught 169 human smugglers. We thought we had kicked this one out, we knocked this one out completely out of the ballpark. The following year, we did 740. So everything we did as far as immigration goes tripled. The number of aliens we caught tripled, the number of smugglers we caught tripled, the number of guns we seized because of this tripled. Everything across the board tripled. This year we're looking at probably a 10 to 20% increase of what we did last year. So human smugglers, we're going to do over 1,000 this year. So, but it's all, every bit of it's politics. Because if you look across the board, Texas is getting hit the hardest. New Mexico voted Democratic. Arizona went Democrat. California, Democrat. Texas was Republican. That's where the push is. And I think it's payback for not being a Democratic state.
And how is Texas being hit the hardest compared to the other states?
Well, Texas, over the years, they always called what they had focus sectors for Border Patrol. Tucson was the easiest place to cross, so they crossed to Tucson a lot. They got that shut down, it was to San Diego. They got that shut down, it went to Brownsville. Laredo had huge influxes. El Paso's had huge influxes, but never Del Rio. So with the pandemic and everything else going on and the politics involved, of course, this is my personal belief.
Right.
When they started coming, we declared an emergency. The county did. The other counties followed suit behind us. Well, with everything going on, all the political stuff, when El Paso was getting hit the hardest with all the immigrants, the easiest place to ship them, money-wise, time-wise, would have been to New Mexico. But they weren't. They were shipped south. El Paso sits here. There's border patrol stations all along the border in New Mexico. Not a single bus went there. They all came south. Because you overflow the system in Laredo or McAllen or even Del Rio, the more people you catch, the harder it is to get them all processed properly, the more you have to let go. So nothing went to New Mexico, Arizona, or California. Now, right now, Arizona's getting hit pretty hard.
Yeah, we were just there last week.
California, for some reason, is not. Same thing with New Mexico. So why? There's too many unanswered questions.
That is interesting. And then when they come through here, whether they are coming through with smugglers, the cartels, so outside of the ports of entry or even with the ports of entry, you very quickly can get to San Antonio and Houston and get to the rest of the country. So if they're trying to move people outside of Texas to the rest of the country, it might be, especially if they're trying to move them to the eastern side of the country, it's easier to go through Texas and to go through
That's why
New Mexico.
McAllen and the Rio Grande Valley has always been hit so hard, because there's 3 highways that lead out of there. They all go to Houston. If we can get to Houston, we can get anywhere. Same thing with Laredo. Laredo's the biggest port of entry in the country. Excuse me. If we can get there, if we can get through Laredo, it's a straight shot to San Antonio. So, like you said, they can assimilate into the country a lot easier going through there. But once those systems get overloaded and they start putting more pressure on down there, where do they come? They come here.
Wow. And then what kind of problems and issues do you have here in this county because of this?
Well, what we started with back in late 21, early 22, we declared a state of emergency. The Commissioner's Court signed off on it. We extended it for 30 days. And then we extended it for a year. The governor followed suit, and 34 other counties followed suit with us. So now we started processing, because we were seeing ranch property being torn up, fences being cut, water troughs being damaged, destroyed, bunkhouses being broken into and vandalized, all through illegal migration. So we declared that emergency, and I vowed that everything we caught, we would prosecute for criminal trespass. Well, the governor thought it was a good idea, so he declared the emergency and took that penalty from a Class C misdemeanor to a Class B misdemeanor. So now everything we arrest on private property goes to jail for criminal trespass. Everybody was saying, well, you're just wasting time and money. Well, we've seen the difference. It's pushed this foot traffic, as we call it, south into another county. I hate to put it that way, but my job is to protect my county.
Well, you only have 35 citizens and 8 deputies, so you've got a lot and a massive amount of land that you've got to protect.
So with the governor's order on Operation Lone Star, after all this, he sent troopers here, and they've done a phenomenal job. We've prosecuted almost 7,000 people for criminal trespass in the past almost 2 years. Normally, the county court, of course, it's all goes through county court. We were good for 50, 60 cases a year, and now we've done 7,000 in 2 years. So it has overloaded our system. Our county has had to hire additional staffing for the courts, additional staffing for my office because all the seized vehicles, or I shouldn't say seized vehicles, but all the impounded vehicles, all of the people that we're having to deal with, the prisoners we're having to transport back and forth. The court system just completely overloaded. We were not prepared for it.
And so what have you had to do as a county? Because going from 50 cases a year to 7,000, that's...
Well, we just had to step up our game and work longer and harder hours. You know, between the grace of God, caffeine, and a strong sense of patriotism, we're going to get through this.
And when they are arrested and then you try them, what happens after that if they're found guilty?
Usually they end up with time served, because they're usually in jail 30 to 60 days before we ever get it to court. And then once their time is served, they're turned over to ICE or Border Patrol.
Okay. And then after that, what do you think ICE and Border Patrol are doing with the people?
Depending on where they're from. If they're Mexican, I'm sure they're going home. If they're from Guatemala, El Salvador, I'm sure they're processing them for something later down the road.
Moving them through somewhere else in the country.
Right.
So you mentioned impounded vehicles and guns at one point. What are some of the things that you're finding? Like when you find a group of people or a handful of people, what is it typically like?
Well, if we're talking the human smuggling issues, it's gone from we get the probable cause to stop the car, turn on the lights, the car pulls over. We're seeing more and more pursuits. We're seeing more and more wrecks. We're seeing people drive through fenced property trying to get away, what we call a bailout. It looks like a covey of quail running in every direction possible. And it puts a strain on the whole situation. My vehicle especially, because my guys are running 12, 14, 16 hours a day, 5-6 days a week. So the mileage on my vehicles is getting up there. Vehicle maintenance is expensive these days. Each vehicle goes through 2-3 sets of tires a year because of the road conditions. So it's had an impact on everything across the board. But the biggest thing that scares me the most is the pursuit. Nationwide, you're going to lose more personnel in an accident due to a pursuit than most anything else. And back in February of this year, in a 28-day period, I think just my guys had almost 40 pursuits.
It's more than one a day.
More than one a day. There were times that we had 2 going on at the same time, 2 different highways. So they try to flood the system. And we're doing everything we can to put that finger in the dike there to keep it from busting. It's like our district attorney, she's awesome. Suzanne West. I mean, she does. We send her cases, she calls, she tries to prosecute everything she can, we send her. And she says, guys, look, I'm not telling you to slow down. That's far from it. We just need to make a little bit better presentation in our casework, because if we were to stop arresting today and everybody we have lined up on the docket for once a jury trial, we're talking 8 to 10 years to get them cleared.
Wow.
That's how far backed up we are.
And so where are the people during that time? Are they waiting?
Some of them are still out on the street. Some of them bond out. We've got the governor was gracious enough. He set up 2 facilities for us that were old state jails. So we're now using them as county facilities. One in the Briscoe unit and the Segovia unit. We've probably got 500 people in jail right now between those 2. At one point, we probably had close to 1,000. But since our area is slowing down a little bit, well, I should say, from 2 years ago, we're not slowing down at all. But from last year, we're slowed down quite a bit. Since the foot traffic's going to another county further south, our apprehensions for criminal trespass have gone way down, so the jail's not quite as full.
And the reason that the foot traffic is going to other counties, I understand why, but let's be specific. Say it out loud.
Because they know that if they're caught in Kinney County, they're going to go to jail. And they don't want to go to jail. They want to get to their destination, start making money, sending it home. If they get caught here, they're going to go to jail for 30, 60, 90 days.
And most of the people who you're catching, it's human smugglers, or are you catching people who are smuggling drugs or
Traditionally,
weapons?
Kinney County, we've always been a little low on the drug seizures.
Okay.
Just because of the way we liked. I mean, Eagle Pass, Laredo, those are your big drug corridors in this part, plus El Paso out west.
Right.
But Kinney County, it's always been slow. It's never been the mecca for some of the drug smuggling. But human smuggling has always been big.
And these human smugglers, what does that, explain what you mean by that? Because people might have an image in their mind, but let's clarify what it actually is.
Human smuggling is somebody will come down from Dallas, Fort Worth, we're getting people as far away from Queens, New York. Come down here. It's all internet. It's all Facebook, FaceTime, stuff like that based.
Social media.
Social media.
Right.
So they're coming down here with the promise of big money. So they come to a predetermined location, pick up X number of people, and then they try to slip them into the country. They're already on this side of the river. They're just picking them up at a stash house or at a motel someplace and trying to get them to San Antonio, Houston, wherever. And they're being promised big money. Some of the people we've talked to said, no, I was supposed to be paid $2,000 a body.
That's what they said in Cochise County to me as well.
So,
2,000.
But here's the question I have of them. Is this the first time you've done it? It's always the first time. This is the first time I've ever done it. I've never done anything like this before. Okay. Say I promise you $2,000 a body. You got 10 bodies. You're looking at $20,000. You show up to the drop-off point where I'm supposed to pay you. What are you going to do if I only give you $1,000? You're not going to call the cops.
Right.
But now I've got you. Okay, so the first time, say I do pay you the $20,000. Now I've got you on the hook for good. You're going to come back. I'm going to call you again. The payment's going to get less and less and less. But now I've got you in that cycle where, if you don't do this again, next time you do, I'm just going to dime you out. You get picked up, then what? Who are you going to report me to? There's nobody. Plus, I'm the main facilitator. I call you and say, hey, I need some bodies moved. You call your buddy, and then he calls somebody else. So that trail is very vague back to me. So that's how they're getting around. That's how they're doing it. And, of course, the cartels are exploiting these people enormously because they're being promised a trip. Okay, we're going to get you to Houston. We're going to get you a job in Houston.
And when you say these people, they're exploiting them, they're exploiting the immigrants.
The immigrants,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the people that are doing the smuggling.
Okay.
So we're going to smuggle you to Houston. It's going to cost you, $8,000 per person. There's a family of 3. Okay, you're looking at $24,000. They don't have that kind of money. So it's we're going to get you a job and you're going to pay us back. So basically it's indentured slavery. And nobody wants to look at it like that. But
No.
That's exactly what it is. And slavery's alive and well.
And a lot of Americans, not all, but many, are either just don't even know it's happening or they're turning a blind eye to it.
I think a lot of it's a blind eye. Because I talk to people in Dallas, Fort Worth, and we've never heard of that. It's all over the news. It's on every news channel what's going on. But I've never heard of it. I don't really see that going on. And I invite them down. Come take a look. I'll show you. I'll take you wherever you want to go. And I'll show you the record. I'll put you in a truck with. We had a guy come up from Fox News. He said, man, he goes, I want to ride with one of your deputies. He was the cameraman. So you going to record everything? Oh, yeah, I'm going to record everything. Okay, let's do it. Put him in the truck. Within 3 hours, they had 3 different loads. It was just boom, boom, boom. He comes back a week later and says, can I go out again? Dude, I don't know if I can afford to put you out there again. He goes out again. What do they do? In the first 30 minutes, they had 2. So it's out there. They just have to open their eyes and take a look. And I know a lot of people will see it on Facebook or YouTube or whatever, and they'll go to something else. They don't want to see it.
No, because it's hard to look at this.
It is. It's hard to look at. But now this is where I'm not going to get on a soapbox, but I'm going to give you an example.
Okay. We're good with soapboxes here.
Of what my deputies go through. That's the way everybody talks about how many people you're catching, what's going on to the community, what's happening in the county, the state. Let's look at the deputies aspect.
Yeah.
I've got a deputy, love her to death. She's like one of my children. Meaner than a snake. Holy cow. If she ever got mad at me, I wouldn't even think about shooting her because it'd just make her madder.
Okay.
But last year, we had 17. Normally in Kinney County, we'll come across 1 or 2 dead bodies a year. That's just tradition. We're always going to have them. Last year, the year before last, we had 17. So a huge increase. This particular deputy worked 8 of them. She went out into the field, had to identify the body, and it was everything from they'd been there for a year, year and a half, we just now finding them, to when they got hit by a train 30 minutes ago. She's 26 years old. She shouldn't, you got cops in Dallas, Fort Worth, big cities, that haven't seen that much carnage in a career. And she saw that much in a 12-month period.
And these are, this is not like a cop who might come up to a car wreck or I understand in the inner city you can be dealing with with violence
Right.
that it is very, very gory, but this isn't just like a car wreck where they're immediately injured and you're quickly moving them on to get treatment, hopefully treatment for them.
Right.
These deaths, if they've been out there for a year, there's not much left. And if they've been out there for a week in this heat, they said the heat index here today is going to be 120.
Right, and
It's
it does get hot
brutal.
this time of year. But one of the things is, on the human aspect of it, she's got to deal with this for the rest of her life.
Right.
It may come up 6 months from now, it may never come up, it may come up 10 years from now, who knows. But on the other side of that coin is there's an individual who's passed away out in the brush. He's got family members here in the States or in Mexico or both that have no idea what happened to him. Where
Right.
is he? He never showed up. He left back in January. We haven't seen him. And sad to say, I don't have the resources to go out and we do get calls from time to time. I don't have the resources to go look.
Right.
And that weighs heavy on everybody involved. I mean, we're not a bunch of animals.
No,
we're
of course
human
not.
beings. We try to help these people as much as we can. I mean, my guys, if they come across and they offer them food, they offer them water, they put them in the air conditioning of the truck to get them cooled down until they get checked out. One of the roughest ones that we had to deal with 2 years ago was a female deputy and her partner got a call that there was some aliens that were in bad shape. They got down there, and this guy was severely dehydrated. While they're helping him the best they can. While we're waiting for EMS to show up to get down there to help, he passed away on them, right there in front of them. Now, you talk to the deputies and say, "Are you okay?" "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. I've been doing this for 40-something years. It's never fine. But it's one thing to find a body, but it's another to sit there and try to help this person. I mean, we're not EMTs. We're police officers.
Right.
Get him in the shade, try to give him some water, try to take care of him until proper medical attention can be done. And he passed his way right there in front of you. It's tough. It's very tough. And and the vehicle wrecks. I mean, we've had the pursuits where it end up in a wreck because the driver lost control of the vehicle and somebody gets killed. We kind of expect that, but it's still traumatic on the deputies.
Right.
So,
My dad is a Methodist minister, so
Okay.
when I was growing up, when the phone rang in the middle of the night, we knew someone was dead or dying, and that's how we talked about it in my house because that's what was going on. And my dad was either going to the hospital to be with the family, or and the person who was injured or sick, or he was going to be with the family to help them through the grieving process. And my dad's very gifted in that process. Throughout the COVID situation, I wound up connecting very early on with doctors who were trying to help patients and save patients and stop the lockdowns and in the mandates. And these are doctors, emergency room doctors, so they are accustomed to, unfortunately, seeing people die. And I don't mean that like they're okay with it. I just
Right.
mean it is a little bit different than a deputy because it's part of their job, and they understand that they may save some people and some may not make it. And even these doctors who are fairly hardened to it because of the reality of their job, I've watched them break down in tears, just being devastated at what happened. And they're dealing with death and dying in sickness every single day. For your deputies, I can imagine just how difficult that is.
and it's tough, but like I tell the deputies, I said, look, we're all Christians here. We know that if everything went well, he's in a better place than he is right now.
Right.
This, what we're looking at, what we're having to pick up and put on there, is just the shell.
Right.
The individual himself is with God, and he's up there, he's living the life, but this is just the shell.
Right.
So we're not dealing with the person, we're dealing with the shell. This is just what's left over. And that seems to help him a little bit more.
That is a good way. I'm glad that you help them in that manner. And I was with the sheriff, whose name is totally slipping my mind at this moment, in Brooks County yesterday.
Benny Martinez.
Yes. And so they have a
Yes.
lot more
Yes.
of this than what you have. 60, he said that on average since 2009, they've had 60 deaths
Right.
in the county a year.
It's because where they're being dropped off at in correlation to the Border Patrol checkpoints. So they're dropping off in certain areas, and the humidity, the whole 9 yards down there gets them.
Right.
And of course, they have more people walking through the brush. But in his county, it's a straight shot to the checkpoints. And so that's where they're losing the majority of them, is just before the checkpoint and just after, because of the heat.
Yeah, and the heat is it is absolutely brutal.
Right.
It is truly brutal. So this is the smuggling aspect, the human smuggling aspect, and you don't have many drugs. You did mention that you have confiscated weapons and guns. How many of those, and what is that like?
It's hard to count. Last year, I think we did 89 guns.
Okay.
So this year it's slowed down a little bit. We're not seizing as many, but we are seeing things like the AK-47s, AR platforms, pistols. I'll name the pistol. I've got it in the evidence room. But for some reason, the seizure on firearms has dropped a little bit. There for a while, every load we caught, the driver had a gun.
Okay.
And now, for whatever reason, not exactly sure, but it has kind of dropped.
Is there a different crime that they're charged with if they're smuggling people with a weapon versus with no weapon?
It's an additional it ups the
charge?
ante a little bit.
Okay. All right. And then when it's human smuggling that you're encountering here in this county, is it mostly adults or is it children as well?
Mostly adults. Very rarely will we have children involved. Maybe one or two a month.
Okay.
But mostly adult males.
And the adult males who are moving through them, when they go into work, they have to pay off the money, which is how they become really indentured servants or slaves. And the $2,000 that you mentioned, that's a ride from basically the border in America to wherever they're going in Houston. There's probably more money after that to get to their final destination.
One woman we did talk to this last year, actually we caught her walking through one of the ranches, and she kind of gave us a really good deal. She was Guatemalan, I believe. To get from Guatemala to the Mexican border was $8,000.
Okay, that's where I was going. How much?
From the Mexican border to Houston was going to be another $4,000. But her ultimate goal was Atlanta.
Okay.
So from Houston to Atlanta was going to be another $3,000, just for her.
That's 17.
So she's racked up this huge debt that she's going to have to pay back, work for the motel or whatever industry they put her in, and to pay this back. But at the same time, okay, you owe me, we'll just use $10,000 because it's a round number.
Right.
My smuggler's Jan, you owe me $10,000. Okay, but you're going to have to live in the apartment complex I tell you to live in, or the housing area. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to charge you rent. So now you owe me $8,000 or $10,000 plus rent. Oh, you're going to need a ride to work. That's going to cost you $2 a day. Or you're going to need a ride home from work. That's another $2. You're working in a onion field. Well, you're going to need a shovel, a hoe, and a sack. Sack's $1 a day. The shovel and the hoe, $2 a day a piece. So it never ends. So you're having to pay to get smuggled in here, pay your rent, pay your smuggler back, pay for the tools for your trade. You ever going to get out of debt? No.
Well, they design it that way.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure they're taking the checks or the payments.
Oh, yeah.
And then they get paid after
whatever's left over.
Yeah, whatever's left.
And you're going to have to buy food at the local grocery store that we own. So it never ends.
They probably, from some of what I have heard talking to other people who are dealing with the human smuggling aspect of it, they probably take their paperwork as well, the government paperwork, so they basically hold that hostage so they don't have the proper paperwork to move around if they wanted to escape.
Right, so they'll end up living in the shadows in some, for lack of a better word, slum area, and that's just where they're going to live the rest of their life. But it's being sold as you're going to come to the land of milk and honey, you're going to come to the land of opportunity, which we still are. But you're going to work for us in our conditions. And, I mean, the sweatshops are still in existence, and they always will be, because nobody wants to look at it. Nobody wants to admit that it still exists. And until we can come to that realization that, yes, these people are being sex trafficked. I mean, there's sex trafficking going on with minors, with young females. The men are being put into whatever. And until we open up our eyes and are willing to admit that this is going on in our country, it's never going to end.
I hope that as people are listening to this, if it's the first time that they've heard it, that they pay attention and understand. I'm talking to a sheriff. I'm not talking to some crazy person on the side of the road or a conspiracy theorist online. I mean, you're dealing with this every single day.
Every day.
And your deputies are dealing with the consequences of it and trying to do so in the most humane manner possible.
And that's part, and of course, some of these people that we catch in the smuggling, they're from Oklahoma. We had a couple or from Houston or wherever, and their vehicles impounded until we get through with the case to see if there's any other connection to any other case that we've got open. So they're on foot. They have to wait for somebody to come pick them up from Houston, Oklahoma, or Dallas, wherever. So I've got a table set up out front of the office where they can sit and wait. It's in the shade. They've got a plug where they can plug their phones in and talk to family and whatever. But I can't tell you how many times I've walked by there and said, "Have you eaten today?" "Well, I ate dinner last night." "Hop in the truck, let's go." And I'll take them up to the local restaurant and say, "Hey, give the waitress out. Of course, I know everybody. Here, look, here's $20. Give them whatever they want. If it's not enough, I'll pay you when I come back. If it's more than enough, keep the rest for a tip because you're helping us out here." I'll drop them off at the restaurant, let them step there for an hour or two, eat, sit in the cool, drink some tea. Then I'll go pick them up and bring them back. And I've had men that I've done this for, when I take them back to the office, they're crying.
Right.
"Well, we thought you were just going to beat us." "No, we're not going to beat you. We're humans. You did something wrong. I'm not going to hold it against you as a human being. I can't. But yes, you broke the law. You crossed that line. But I'm not going to let you sit here and starve. I'm not going to let you go without water. I've put people up in motel rooms because, well, my mother can't come pick us up for another 2 days. I've bought bus tickets to get them home. I've bought food, clothes, diapers, whatever. But it's just part of what we do.
And are you paying for this out of your pocket, or is a budget coming out of the county?
It doesn't come out of my budget, that's for sure.
Okay. You are showing them the milk and honey that America, the promise of America, the greatness of America by doing that kind of thing. I have heard people say, well, if the government doesn't take care of all these people, who's going to? And we're the most compassionate, generous nation on earth.
We truly are. Now this is, of course, this is one of my theories. Worked with the Border Patrol for 30 years. Saw how the system works. It can be simplified. It can be, but it takes Congress to do it. It has to change the law, has to change the regulations on how to enter properly. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law immigrated legally, but it took them a while because my mother-in-law is one of 8, and my father-in-law was one of 7 or 8. So as they had the money, they came across legally, and not until then. So for families, it probably needs to be simplified a little bit. Reduce the fees, get the lawyers out of the situation, get it to where they can understand the process, get it taken care of, and come over legally. I mean, half this county's got ties to Mexico for family. My mother-in-law still goes over there because she's got family down in San Carlos. So they go quite a bit. So the relationship is there. It's just how do we get it through Congress to maybe increase the number of visas, cut down on the waiting list, and let these people come over. If they're God-fearing people and they're not criminals, they haven't done anything wrong, by God, let them in. I mean, who knows? There may be some guy sitting on the other side of the river right now that got the cure for cancer, just waiting to get over here. What are his qualifications? Let's get him in here, let's get him in here, let's get him assimilated, and see what they can do. And anything, and I don't care what it is, if they're being a productive member of society, whether they have their own little food wagon, food truck, or they get over here and do things right and they become the CEO of a major company that they started. Either way, we can benefit from the immigrants coming over. It's just, let's quit being greedy, let's simplify the situation and go from there.
Okay, I would imagine that Biden and Mayorkas and people within the administration might argue, well, we have simplified the system.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
They haven't simplified the system. They've overloaded the system. If we bring enough people over here, we get the courts backed up, then these people will never have to go for their hearing. They'll just be here forever. We can put them in the agriculture area, we can put them in manufacturing and not have to pay them a decent wage or a livable wage because we're paying them under the table. When I went to D.C., I went to D.C. back in 2006. I was there for 6 months. Well, weekends, Washington's Washington. So because I was detailed up there, didn't really know the whole lay of the land. I went out and looked at things, but it's just too congested. Sometimes I go in and work on Saturday. Well, I decided to take a Saturday off. I'm out roaming the streets of Washington, D.C., and go out to one of the battlefields, and there's a couple of guys there. I get to talking to them, and they're from El Salvador. And told them who I was. I said, no, guys, I'm not going to arrest you. Just have some questions. What are you doing here? They were working in the construction industry. They were drywallers, put up the sheetrock. I said, how much are they paying you up here? Well, since we don't have documents, they're paying both of us $30 an hour. Decent wage for down here. But in Washington, a single guy was making $65 an hour. So here's these two guys. Of course, they're living together. They're brothers, live in the same apartment. They're paying, sharing the split and everything equally. But the contractor was saving money because he was paying them in cash under the table and not having to report it.
And that's wrong in so many levels. It's wrong to those brothers who aren't being paid the same amount as everyone else. It is wrong to Americans who might want to have such a job, because Americans they're going to expect the wage that the market actually would demand with the government regulations on top of it, which is how you get to $65 an hour probably. So they can't compete for illegal jobs that are outside the scope of the law. And then it's wrong to the businesses who are trying to follow the law,
right?
Because they can't, their houses are going to, if let's say it's drywall for a house, well, that house, if you're paying $65 an hour versus $30 an hour, the cost of the labor in the house is going to be more than double. So the house winds up being more expensive.
Well,
so their profit margin goes down.
But at the same time, if I hire two guys for $30 an hour versus one guy for $60 an hour, I get twice as much done in theory. But if I've got a guy that's doing really good sheetrock work and he can lay, 10, 15 sheets an hour, and these guys between the two of them are only doing, 15 to 20, I'm still saving $5 an hour. But I'm not having to pay taxes on them. And I'm getting twice as, in theory, getting twice as much done.
Yeah.
So plus, a guy that's making top wages and he's really good at his job, he's probably going to backtalk me from time to time because he knows his job better than I know his job. These two guys ain't going to say a word. You come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, you go home at 6 p.m. The other guy's going to come in at 8, he's going to go home at 5. So I can abuse these guys for more hours, not have to pay overtime, not have to pay insurance, not have to pay workman's comp. So in the long run, in theory, I'm saving money. But like you said, at the end of the day, how's the overall product? Have I produced a better product than my competition, or am I just saving myself money?
Yeah, and if you're saving yourself money, but you're doing it in an illegal manner, it's just so wrong to all the people who are following the law.
And there's some places where they've hired these people that are not here legally. On payday, they have to give a little kickback to the supervisor. Yeah.
Wow. You mentioned, you said that we could fix it, that Washington could fix the problem. And one of the things you said is to increase the number of visas and make sure people assimilate. Why do you think assimilation is so important?
Well, of course, the one thing, it's human nature. We go all the way back to, say, the early 20th century. Ellis Island, 1901, 1902, when everybody was coming across. They're all coming through New York, some of them coming through Galveston. But say in your group there's 100 Irishmen. Where are you going to feel more comfortable? Living in some other neighborhood or living with a bunch of Irish? or Italian or Mexican or whatever. You're gonna go to where you feel comfortable. But at the same time, which is fine, but at the same time, you kind of need to assimilate into the rules and regulations and customs of America. Yes, we are a melting pot. I mean, they say you can't find happiness. I tell you, I can find happiness in a Mexican restaurant. I love Mexican food.
Me too.
So, and I mean, I know people that are that way about Italian food or whatever. So yes, we still have to have our individuality, but at the same time, we need to still working on the main cause and focus on the main thing, the continuity of the United States. Let's not divide this because, well, you're Mexican, you're Italian, we're not going to talk to each other. Or you're Irish, we don't like the Jews. This, that, whatever the case may be, we need to focus on the main thing. We're all here to do the best we can to keep our country together. And I don't care if you're green, blue, black, purple. If we've got something in common, we can be best friends. And just say, well, you don't like me because I'm green. Trust me, if we sit down at a table long enough, I can find something else to hate you for. It's just that simple. But we're all human beings. There's no reason to divide the country based on politics, based on race, based on religion, or anything. I grew up in Del Rio. I'm not going to say it was a sheltered life, but you've been to Del Rio. 30,000 people. Everybody knew everybody. When me and my buddies were going to school, it didn't matter which group we were with. Sometimes we were with the rednecks, sometimes we were with the metalheads, sometimes we were with the black kids over here. We didn't care. We all grew up together. We all went to the same school. When I graduated high school, there was 400 of us. So you couldn't help but interact. My first, I experienced a little bit of racism when I was in college, but was in the Air Force. We had two guys. One was from Philadelphia, one was from Boston, both Irish. Yeah, Irish from Philadelphia was a little strange, but they were Irish. Oh, we're Irish. They hung out together for about 4 weeks, until they found out one of them was Catholic, the other one was Protestant. They quit talking. I said, what are you, I didn't understand it. And the guy said, well, it was his uncle or somebody, was excommunicated from the church because he married a Protestant. Really? We haven't come that far.
Yeah.
In 250 years. Why? I mean, I can walk into any church in this community here and feel welcome. I can walk into any household in this and feel welcome. People I've arrested, I've seen them in the grocery store, they come over and shake my hand. That can happen anywhere. It should happen everywhere, but it doesn't. So assimilate, everybody needs to kind of get along. I don't care. I mean, if you're from China, if you're Poland, whatever, if you're a productive member of the society, a productive member of the community, there's no reason we can't sit down and have lunch together.
And there are a lot of people in this country, the mainstream media, both sides of the political aisle, they find reasons to divide, and it benefits them to divide. And I certainly can get on a soapbox and rant about an issue or a policy, and believe me, I get really angry with Joe Biden. But I always urge people, when we're talking about our political opposition, I do my very, very best to say, let's remember they're Americans. Our enemies are the enemies of the country, and these are just the opposition. And even as the country has become more and more divided, I still try to hold on to that, because we have to have that commonality and that common ground. We live in the same country. We're going to continue living in the same country.
Well, I'm convinced that the mainstream media is part of 90% of the cause, because people I talk to, I mean, some of these smugglers we catch, they're from Oklahoma, they're from all over the country. And they're Hispanic, they're white, they're black, you name it, we've had it.
Well, $2,000 a person for a carload, that's yeah.
And when I go back there and talk to them, and I get some strange looks from the smuggler. You're actually talking to me? Why wouldn't I? Well, I didn't expect to be treated like this because I'm black. Why am I going to treat you any different than I'm going to treat anybody else?
Right.
That part I still can't comprehend. Well, hopefully I'll take that to my grave. But they're people. And they just, I'll respect you, you respect me. Yes, you just committed a crime. You just, trying to smuggle some people in here. But that means I can't come back here and talk to you. Where are you from? Does your family know you're here? On and on and on. I, as a person, as a Christian, as a human being, have to make sure that they're safe and secure in my jail. So I have to ask them these questions. I have to go back there and visit with them. Are you okay? Because sometimes you can see it in their eyes, they're scared to death. We're not here, we're not going to beat you, I promise. We're not going to take you out back and flog you and waterboard you or nothing. Make sure you're comfortable. Are you hungry? Do you have food? Do you have water? We're going to take care of you. Yes, you committed a crime, but you're still a human being. And I think the mainstream media tries to separate us on some of the issues that they want to put on the news, that they just want to stay with. And I think that's where the big divide is.
Okay, let me go back to something you said in the beginning, just to make sure that we have clarity on that. Several minutes ago, you mentioned something about how people would come up and you said they fled the system. And I think you were talking about the cartels flooding the system, but would you just elaborate on who they are and how that is happening?
Well, the cartels, they're in control of Mexico. We know it. We don't want to admit it, but yes, they control both sides of the border. There's not a cartel faction that doesn't have somebody in the major cities throughout the United States. So they promise these people big prizes, push them across, push them off. We've seen it in Eagle Pass. Groups of 200-300 show up at a time. That completely overwhelms the system. They've got to take every bus, every person they have on duty to handle that group. So what are they pushing through behind it on the other side where there's nobody at? The fentanyl, the cocaine, the heroin, the meth, all of it. So it's a two-headed spear. Or, you've got the aliens on one side, plus they're pushing everything else on the other. So yes, and they've got it worked out perfectly. It's just the people here don't want to see that.
Right.
We've got a huge fentanyl crisis going on in our cities, but we don't want to look at that because, well, that's not popular.
And yet, if you have a family member or a friend who is affected by that crisis, you understand how bad it is. It's easy, I suppose, for some people to just put blinders on and not pay attention to it if it's not affecting them.
Well, when you've got and I use Nancy Pelosi as an example. She lives in this huge house, gated community. She's got security everywhere.
Right.
She's never had to call the police to come save her. She's never had to deal with somebody on the street panhandling or not say abusing, but approaching her and pestering her until she gives up some money so they can go get something to eat, drink, whatever. She's never had to live that life. And until these people realize that that is what's going on in the mainstream, in the real world, none of these policies are going to change. And I'm convinced that if the Republicans came up with a plan and said, we're going to give every illegal alien $1 million cash, as soon as they walk in, here's $1 million cash, the Democrats would fight it.
Yeah.
Because it's not their idea. We have to do what's best for the country, not for the party.
I think that you're right about that. As I've dealt with the issue of illegal immigration over the last, it's been it has been a decade now. We first took it up in 2013, fighting the Gang of 8 bill. I think that by and large, the politicians in Washington, D.C., like the immigration, whether they're dealing with illegal immigration or calling it migrants, whatever it is, it's their football, it's their political football, and they like to pass it back and forth and tackle each other and score some points on the board, but they don't actually want to solve the problem. They don't care about solving the problem. If they solve the problem, they can't put those points on the board. But
they don't realize that if they solve the problem, just that individual, we'll use fentanyl, for example, they solve that problem, just fentanyl. There's so many other problems that go away.
Right.
You just solve that one little problem and it's done. But they're not going to, because I'm not going to go off on the far right conspiracy stuff right now. But if they pick that one problem, solve the fentanyl problem, boom, 3 others go away.
Yeah.
The rapes, the murders, the thefts, everything associated with drugs goes away. Will there always be drugs? Yes, there will. We legalize marijuana, we're always going to have marijuana being smuggled in because it's cheap. Just because you legalize it doesn't make it go away.
In your county, things are different. If other counties and if the entire country followed the law, do you think the problems would be different?
As far as the immigration problem, back in, I can't even remember what year it was. Anyway, they started Operation Streamline. And we started in Eagle Pass. One particular area was getting hit the hardest with legal immigration. So anybody that was apprehended that had crossed in that area was prosecuted for 8 U.S.C. 1325, which is illegal entry into the United States. Once we got that zone under control, we went to the next two. Got that under control, but next thing you know, all along the Del Rio sector, everything that being apprehended is prosecuted and spending anywhere from 30 to 180 days in jail. Our apprehensions went from here to here. I mean, they dropped through the floor.
And the word got out.
Word got out, don't try to enter through here. So they go through Laredo, they go through Brownsville. Well, they started prosecuting down there. Well, it all went to Arizona, where the courts were a little different and they wouldn't take the prosecution. But for the longest time, Del Rio sector, I mean, we had the fewest apprehensions and the securest area along the border. So enforcing the law, yes, it works.
So what do you think the master key to border security is?
You have to have the penalties to go with the crime. You can't just enter the United States and get a free pass. You can't without some type of consequence. The laws are useless. So enforce the law. We try to enforce everything we can here in Kinney County, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we have to arrest people that we don't really want to arrest, but because we have to, we do. And the laws are there for a reason.
And if you don't like the law, enforce the law and work through the legislative process to change the law.
Bingo. That's how they're all changed.
And if you change the law without enforcing it, no one's going to believe that the new law matters.
As long as the law is changed and enforced in a constitutional manner.
Right.
So as long as we follow the Constitution and the laws are just, we don't have a problem.
Which is not going through executive orders to ignore the current law in the books.
No.
So, well, I really appreciate your time today, Sheriff Coe.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And I'm really glad to know that you're seeing, I know it's up further than it had been, what's happening in your county as it relates to illegal immigration, but I'm glad that as you have sent a message that if you're doing that here in this county, we're going to arrest you, that it's decreased a bit.
And what has really helped, I mean, yes, we did it with 6 deputies in the beginning and 8 part-time. Well, the governor sent a bunch of troopers down here and the troopers have helped. Well, Galveston County has helped by they send 3 to 4 deputies every 2 weeks.
Wow.
On rotation. They've been here for going on 2 years. Goliad County was the first one to back us up on the signing of the emergency status. Now we have Bayou Vista here, they're from Galveston. Their officers are here. Police officers are here helping us. Looks like Liberty County is going to be coming to Kinney County here shortly. And I've had people reach out from Oklahoma.
Wow.
Sheriffs up there wanting to come help, because what affects us here today affects them tomorrow. And we're getting a ton of support. And the locals love it because they know that, A, we're freed up a little more and we can cover more areas, plus the number of DWIs that we've seen has dropped because we got troopers everywhere. And it's making a huge difference. But how long can we sustain it?
I'm not sure how long you can sustain it, but I'm very grateful that you're doing it and that so many others are stepping up to help out, and that you've got an amazing DA who's willing to prosecute.
She's awesome. And our county attorney, he's pretty good too. Got to give him credit. I coached him in T-ball.
You must have done a good job, and his parents as well.
The thing about Kinney County is we're all related together somehow. Our county judge, me and him served on the school board together. Me and his wife served on the stock board together for Kinney County for 4-H kids. Our county judge was the ag teacher when our county attorney was in school. And the county attorney got a little out of line, and the county judge just kind of popped him a time or two. I taught him in T-ball and Little League. So we're all related somehow. I've seen these kids grow up. I coached either their parents or grandparents.
Well, it's your home, and you want to make sure that your home is safe. And people who live in Columbus, Ohio, or Cincinnati, or Chicago, or anywhere else, they want to know that their home and their backyard is safe. And you're doing that for your citizens and trying to help the rest of the country.
And for the most part, we are still Mayberry. I still hang out at the school, read to the kids, hang out with the kids, do things with the kids, for the kids. That's the only resource we have. So we have to take care of the kids.
Well, you've got a great county. I enjoyed driving through it. I've enjoyed meeting you, and maybe sometime I'll come back and do a drive along with you.
You're more than welcome. We'll put you in with one of your camera guys and see what actually goes on.
Well, we would very much enjoy that. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for everything you're doing for your county and for the country.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate everything y'all are doing, bringing light to this to the people who aren't paying attention. So thank you so much.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin, produced by Kevin Mooneyhan, and directed by Luke Livingston. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to stop freedom thieves from turning our country into a communist nightmare, be sure to click the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, click the notifications bell to get an alert every time we post a new episode.